Welcome to another episode of Courageous Me. And very, very excited today. We've got the gorgeous Evelyn Lopez Delon. And I'm hoping I've said that correctly.
You have.
And here's how I know Evelyn. So I spoke at a badass women's networking event one time, met her there afterwards. And then the following month, she was the keynote speaker. And oh my God, she was amazing. Incredible speaker, amazing story, so inspiring. And she also is a podcast host. So she and I were like, and we need to get onto each other's podcast. So I've got her here today on my podcast. She's also the co-founder of SaaS Video Marketing, but I'll get her to explain that. And she's got a whole lot of other things that she does, but I'll get you to explain all that, Evelyn. Save me going through it all and getting it wrong. So
Amazing.
before we get into the nitty gritty and find out a bit more about you, could you just share what excites you to have a conversation with me today about courage?
Well, Kim, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be on your podcast. Let me start off by saying why I'm so excited to speak with you. And I'm glad that you actually introduced me as how we met, because let me just get, just for anyone listening today about how I actually met Kim. And how I even ended up speaking. It was all about Kim. I saw her speak. I saw her speaking at this event, and I was like, wow, how inspiring. That really, really, it was just a moment that I felt so inspired by. And I was like, I want to make people feel that way. I'm like, maybe I should become a speaker. So then I was just like, I'm going to put it out there for 2025 to become a speaker because you inspired me to do so. And then the opportunity came up the next month, right? So I'll be talking a little bit about that as well, about, just putting intentions out there and being courageous enough to just say yes to opportunities. And an opportunity came, and that's how I ended up speaking. So first of all, that's how I got to meet Kim and was inspired by her. So I'm very grateful to be here and honored to be here. So thank you for
Ah,
inviting me.
and I as far as why you're excited to talk about courage, I know that your whole story took a whole lot of courage. It took courage to get up on the stage and share it. But your story is all about courage. So I'm
Yes.
super, super keen to know a bit more. So tell everyone listening, who are you? Who is Evelyn? And a little bit about what you do. So I've only given the SaaS video marketing
Yes.
job, but I know you do lots of other cool things. And then
Yes.
when you've done that, could you share when was a moment where you had to really reach in and find some courage? I don't care how far back you got to go personally, professionally,
Yeah.
but when is a moment that you really recall you had to find some courage to do whatever it is that you were going to do?
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, let's start off with a little bit about me first. So I am Evelyn Lopez Delon, as you introduced me. I'm the co-founder of SaaS Video Marketing, and I founded that with my husband. I am also the host of the Legacy Building Mamas podcast, and I am now a business and mindset coach for mamas. And so what got me here is, I guess I'd like to talk a little bit about who I was before I even became a
Mm.
mum, because I think that's where the courage came into play. So before becoming a mum, I was all about my corporate career job. I was a high achiever, loved my job. I loved getting promotions. And that for me felt like a fulfilled life, right? Like, I was getting promotions every 18 months, and living the freedom life that I thought, was all about, having a great job, a six-figure salary, and then traveling the world. I used to travel every year. I even worked for an airline. So for me, the freedom of living a freedom-filled life was always part of who I was and my identity. And then I became a mum. And that all changed, right? As a mum, your identity just shifts. And when I went back to work, I no longer fit in. I wasn't really living
Mm.
that fulfilled life that I once thought I would. And I wasn't living that freedom life because I was stuck in a 9 to 5 routine, trying to get into work at a certain time, being told that I need to work on this and I needed to work on that. And that for me, I guess the courage part came in when I realized that it wasn't living within my values. So for me, I'm very value driven, and courage is actually one of my top 10 values.
Oh.
And
Oh, I love that. Oh, so this is
yeah,
absolutely the right place to be having this conversation. Yeah.
absolutely. So I just wanted to talk about what courage actually means for me and how that actually pillar started. It was
Right.
about okay, so what does courage mean, and what are our values? So when I realized I just wasn't happy, it wasn't a fulfilled life. I wasn't happy, I wasn't who I was before, and I needed to change that. I was just like, it's not
Mm.
happening. So Adam and I actually listed down our values. What do we want as a family?
And
And
this is after you've
courage.
had kids.
Yes, after we had kids, because I noticed I'm not happy, I'm not feeling fulfilled. What is that? Okay, let's talk about values. What do we want our future to look like, and what do we want our girls to instill? So courage came up, and this is like going back to the first question that you said. Why am I so excited?
Mm.
Because for us, like we have a values, like we've got 10 of them, and we framed them up. I don't know if you can see it back there, but that's a massive frame, and courage is actually at the
Oh.
corner of it. And we have a bit of a definition of what courage actually is. So for us, courage is actually, there's three things. We dared to be different, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Courage is being different, right? Just fighting the societal, like, the societal pressures of everything, right? The other one is we are brave to speak our minds. So
Oh.
that's where the podcast sort of came in, because I'm like, great, we need to inspire people and remind them that they're also capable of doing what we're doing. And
Mm.
then we take actions that are out of our comfort zone.
Oh,
Yes,
I love that you've
that's it.
even got a definition that works for you, not just a generic, get it out of the dictionary. You've
Yeah.
broken it into three pillars under courage, and you and your husband, I'm assuming, agree on it.
Yep. Yep.
Wow.
Absolutely. And so since then, once we were clear on our values and what we wanted to live up to, we realized that we needed to change things up. That working 9 to 5, I wasn't living up to my values. I wasn't being courageous enough, because it was more
Yeah.
comfortable and more safe staying in the 9 to 5
Mm.
job, right?
Way more.
Yeah.
Way more.
Yes.
Yeah.
So after doing that activity, we were like, let's just do this. And so when I was pregnant with my second, I took that maternity leave time off,
Mhm.
and we really structured what our business would look like.
Oh, I love that.
Mhm.
Oh, I've got so many questions. Oh
Yeah.
my God. Okay. So I don't forget them. The first one is, obviously there's a lot of people that get stuck, and they're doing something that they're doing that they don't love, or they're no longer fulfilled, that fire in their belly's been dampened out. How did you know that doing your values and getting really clear on what your values were would unlock something that would help you make decisions? Or did you not know and it was just coincidence?
No, I've done this before. Good question. So I have done this before, and I had done it maybe a couple of times in my life before,
Yes.
because growing up, I had a difficult childhood, starting with like my mum passing away when I was only 4 years old. And then my dad just like, living every day just on survival mode, right? And so he didn't have much time for me, and I spent a lot of time alone. And so and in a negative environment, because he was just surviving, right? And so I got a lot of that, and I needed to mind, it's all mindset, right? I really needed to go, why am I unhappy here? Well, it's actually, I'm unhappy. It was always about me just, I'm in a pursuit of just happiness. I think that's what I've lived to, a pursuit of happiness, and identifying when I'm not happy. And then I sit in silence and I think about, what is it that I need? And I actually, meeting Adam was the second time I actually did this activity, where I sit down and go, I need to really be clear here. Do I
Mm.
want to have kids? Because everyone's telling me that I need to have kids. This was in my 30s, right?
I was going to know
Everyone's
how old you were.
telling me,
Yeah.
yeah, that I need to have
Mm.
kids. I'm like, my dad, you're single at 30. Oh my gosh. It was a big thing. I was single at 30. And and then that pressure of having to be, my dad even said it with his own words, you're never going to be a woman if you don't have kids. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. No, no, no. Yes, he said that. And I said, no, 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 no. Me being a woman is knowing myself, whether or not I'm not going to have kids just for the sake of it. Having kids means that you need to be emotionally stable, you need to be financially stable. And look, there's no right or wrong. You can never be emotional stable. But for me at that point in time, I knew I wanted more. Like I didn't want to just have kids. I wanted to be fulfilled if I wanted to,
Mm.
go down that path. And so I just said to him, look, I'm just going to do it if it feels right, if I find the right husband. For me, it's finding the right person. I don't want to
Yeah.
have kids. I want to have kids with the right person, not just because I want to have kids. It's someone that I can see myself and going, yep, if anything happens, my kids are going to be okay because they've got a good father. That for me was success.
Oh, I
And
love that. And do
yeah,
you have sisters?
yeah, I do. I have an older sister and a younger sister actually, and an older brother.
Okay. An older sister, a younger sister, and a brother. Okay.
Yeah.
So did your dad kind of instill that thinking from when you were really young? Like
Yeah.
that kind of, you know, women have kids. That's kind of
Yeah.
it. And if you're going to be a woman, you've got to have kids.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Mm.
did you grow up then wanting kids, or did you grow up with the attitude you just shared where being a woman means I get to choose whether that's the path I want or not? Like, how did that sort of play out growing up? Because I know you've got a lot of self-awareness now, but when you were younger and just growing up,
Yeah.
how did you sort of think about it?
Look, to be honest, it was like I was blessed to have an older sister, and I saw what,
Mm.
I guess not the mistakes, but like the not being aware because she was the older one. And therefore, as an older child, she had to take up the responsibilities of being a mother figure. Right.
Mhm.
So, and
Yep.
I saw
So
her
you've lost your mum.
suffer a lot,
Mm.
in terms of like that responsibility. And then she went to have kids and get married because of the same pressures. And she
Yes.
would say things like, I just got married because my dad got me to, everyone was telling me to get married. And so I just did, kind of thing. And then that sat with me for a while. And then as I was talking to other people and getting married in my 20s, it was the same kind of talk. So I was just being aware of what other people were saying. It was the same thing like, oh, we've been together for 5 years, so now we just need to get married. Like it was just almost like those conversations were happening all around me. And I was like, wait a minute, like they're not the reasons why you should be getting married, because I had a partner at that point of 7 years, and I had
Mm.
girls come up to me is, are you going to get engaged? You've been together for 7 years. So I'm like, that doesn't mean, what about if it's me that doesn't want to get married? And they
Mm.
made me feel like there was something wrong with me. He hadn't proposed to you yet. And so for me, it was just always like that fight response. I've always been a bit of a fighter, and I've
Mm.
always been pushing back on and challenging things. And I used to find
Mm.
myself saying, what about if it's me? Why does
Mm.
the woman have to be the one that wants to get married and all that sort of stuff? Maybe I don't want to get married. Maybe the reason
Mm.
why we're not getting married is because I don't know if that's what I want, and then all of that pressure made me actually realize that the person that I was with at that time wasn't going to be the person I was going to get married to. We had bought a house, and then pressure came even more. And I was like, wait a minute, let me think about this. This is the person I want to have kids with. I'm 25 years old. I'm so young to even know that. And I broke it off. And then from there, it was just living to just what I want, like tuning into myself and not
Mm.
to anyone else around me. But I think the experience of my sister also made me, because I love her so much, and I saw her
Mm.
go through the motions because there was pressures for her to do certain things, and she did it. I was like, nah,
Mm.
there's consequences to that.
But what a beautiful way that you could learn that, like firsthand experience. And given that you'd lost your mother when you were really little,
Yeah.
that you could see what she went through, and that the pressure that she got, you were going, hey, I'm not going to wear that. She's been through it. She's
Yeah.
been a role model. I'm now going to make my own decisions, and I'm going to question it. You made a comment in there that
Mm-hmm.
you've always been a fighter,
Yeah.
or you've, kind of challenged and pushed things. How do you know that? Like, when did that sort of come out? Because it's obviously part of why you were able to do this. Where did you first notice that?
That's a really good question. I think it comes from like being a bit rebellious for my dad, like it was just, and
Yep.
because, maybe also I have thought about this before, maybe it's the fact that as much as like it is tragic that I lost my mum at such a young
Mm.
age, but if you think about that in itself, and then my dad not ever being around, I had space to feel like I could have that, what's the word, I guess, the freedom of thought, freedom of like there wasn't anyone I needed
Mm,
to live up to. You know, it wasn't like my mum was around to tell me that I needed to do certain things. And because my dad was always working and I became really independent when I started working when I was 14 years old, paying bills. So for me, even being independent enough to go, hey, I'm helping
mm,
you out and I'm
mm,
providing for the family and I have got my own money where I can do my own thing. That independency, I think,
mm,
made me feel like I had some sort of um, reason to push back to my dad and be a bit rebellious and go, hey, wait a minute, I'm helping you out here too. You know, like, and so maybe it's that rebellious in me that as a teenager, I could push back. And even though my dad tried to sort of fit me back
mm,
right in, he was never
mm,
around anyway to sort of put that control in me because I didn't, and I think he knew that as well. So he was kind
yeah,
of a little bit lenient towards me because he knew that like he just
mm.
couldn't, you know, and I think that's where it comes, like that freedom of choice that I kind of had.
And it makes sense though, doesn't it? Like you almost without a mother figure there and a father that was always working. And yes, you had your siblings, but you had more free time to think. But you also had to grow up really quickly and be independent and take on a role that not a lot of other 14-year-olds necessarily have to.
Yep.
That independence, but with the independence came, well, you're not going to tell me what to do
Yep.
because I've got this independence. So then when you see your sister basically at the mercy of society and expectation and probably some of your fathers, you're like, yeah, no, I've
Yeah.
already proven that I can do this. I can have independent thought
Yep.
as well as independent action. And so
Absolutely.
how did the poor boyfriend of 7 years who you break up with, how did he deal with all of that?
Oh, you know what he said to me? It's funny when I brought it up, I was like, "Are you happy? Like, you know, are you happy?" And he's like, his happiness was, "But we have a house. You know, we bought a house. We've got a house, and it was all materialistic stuff." And I'm like, "Yeah, but are you happy with the relationship that you and I have?" And he's like, "But we've been together for 7 years. So that kind of
Mm,
stuff happens. You know, like you get to a point, like, what are you expecting? Passionate, you know, love?" I was like, "Yes." That's exactly what I expect, and I'm 25 years old. Like, you know, we're 25. And I said to him, you know, I think that like there is so much more to live for. And yes, and that was it for me. It was just like that in itself proves that
yep.
you're not really happy. You're happy with the things that we have together, but, you know, I
Mm,
think there's more to partnership than that. And when we broke up, he
mm,
kind of understood, and it was very mature. Like it was a very mature
yes.
breakup. He was
Yep.
very, and because we were friends, you know, for a very long time, we had that
Yeah.
friendship. And I think he understood what I was trying to say during that. He knew we weren't happy. We just were happy with what we had together, but we had
Yeah.
grown apart. He was different. I was
Mm,
different. Different friendships, all that sort of stuff. And it was a very mature breakup, and got to a point where
mm,
actually he helped me realize a lot. And I realized that a lot of boundaries, so saying no to things, came from that
mm,
moment of going, I think I have used this relationship as a boundary to
mm,
my own family, because when it came to finances, I was probably the
mm,
only one that could understand my finances. And I bought into this house with him so that I could say no
mm,
to my family. So my older sister had kids, and, you know, she needed money for X, Y, and Z. And can I have some money for that? And my dad would then be like, can I have some money? I'm stuck with like bills, and it was all financial stuff. And so my no was, I'm I'm going to buy a house. I'm buying a house. So then I realized that saying no was buying a house. So I was doing it for the wrong reasons. And I was in that relationship for the wrong reasons. And then I bought the house and realized, wait a
mm,
minute, this isn't making me happy. So what's happening here? And then I realized that I was just using that as an excuse to create my boundary. And from then onwards, I was like, no more excuses. I'm just going to say no
mm,
when I need to say no.
mm,
And when we
mm,
separated, he actually said to me, because there was money involved, obviously, because we had bought a
mm,
house, I was going to get
mm,
a certain amount of money back. And him and his
mm,
mum actually said, if you want, we can just tell your family that you're not going to get anything out of it. It's almost like they knew, right, that something was going to come my
mm,
way. And he was like, I'm
yeah.
happy to, you know, keep that, like, you know, say that you keep the secret
Mm,
between us that you're not going to get it. I said, no, you know what? I need to deal with that. Like, that's my problem now. And
yeah.
I really appreciate you, you know, and even to that point, it was very mature of him to even want to say that.
Very.
Yeah, and I said, I
Mm,
really appreciate you saying that, but I'm not going to put that bad name on, because then they're going to think you're a bad
mm,
person, that you probably didn't want to give me that money,
mm,
and then you become, the bad person in it. So I said, no, I'm going to tell them exactly the truth. And I did. And not long after, my sister's like, can I borrow $5,000? And I cracked. That's when I cracked it. I was like, you know what? I love you, but no, you've got choices. You've made your choices. I've made my choices, and yes, I do
mm,
have that money, but I've got plans. I've got, I'm going to travel with
mm,
this, and at the end of the day, you'll survive. But I had to go to
mm.
counseling for that. Saying no, and putting those boundaries
Good.
on, and it was one of those things
Mm,
that I just felt bad for. And so that's where I learned all of
mm.
that.
But this is so beautiful. The fact that you bought the house not because this guy was going to be your forever guy and you wanted to buy the house necessarily with him. I'm sure maybe some of that played in, but
Yeah, yeah,
you bought it because it was a a way for you to say no to your
yep,
family without upsetting them. But then eventually you go off anyway, and you then have the courage to say no to your family.
yeah,
That is beautiful. And don't you think though that when you've had a relationship, and again this goes back to society, right? But you've been together 7 years. The natural next step should be that you get married. But you were able to go, maybe that's what society does, but I don't reckon this is the guy that I want to do that with.
yeah, yep.
Like, even to be able to do that, and at such a young age,
Mm,
is, I mean, it's courage, but also a lot of understanding you and self-awareness that's in that moment. And again, given that you were younger, when you had to do things that others were still at school wouldn't have even thought about. Oh, this is juicy.
yeah.
So tell me, the corporate world. Why the corporate world? Why, how did you get into that, and what did you do in the corporate world that then sent you on this whole workaholic kind of climb the corporate ladder path?
Yeah, and that's another good question. I love these questions. You're really bringing a lot out of me, so it's great. The why the corporate world for me is, again, probably an escape. It was an escape where I felt fulfilled. I felt like positivity, going in there, not having to worry about, like, I guess, what was going on in my outside world. It was something that kept me
Mm,
preoccupied, and also I just thrived in it because I just put my whole heart into just being a high achiever, and you know just working for I guess it was, for me anyway, it was kind of like challenging. It was something like I'd go in there and get challenged.
mm,
So what I
mm,
studied was business management. So business management was what I studied, and then I went into HR, always passionate about helping people and being an impact. So no one wants to go into recruitment, but I did. I wanted to help people. So I actually went into a HR role, and then I felt the negativity. So HR generalists, what they do is they deal with all the stuff that managers don't want to deal with, the performance issues, the grieveness,
yes.
the industrial relations, very negative. And then I realized, wait a minute, I'm trying to get away from negativity. So maybe HR is not my thing. And what is more positive? Recruitment, helping people get jobs, right? And then so that's where it
Ah,
led me into
yeah.
recruitment. Again, it's just knowing that I wanted to be more in a positive environment, make an impact in their lives,
Mm,
and getting them jobs. And so I did that for a couple of years. And then I realized, okay, this is fun, but I need to be challenged more. It's very transactional.
mhm.
And then so I went into project management. So that's when I sort of
Oh,
started to look up at, and mentorship for me has always been a thing. I always surround myself with someone that's
mm,
better than me. And then in my corporate world, that always worked out well for me because I looked at someone and
mm.
I'm like, I really want to be like them. So instead of
Yeah.
being a competition, so looking at someone and going, oh my God, that it's threatening or whatever. And it's actually the opposite. It's actually like, I want to be like you. So I want to hang out with you.
Mm,
And so I started to hang out with one of the project managers, learning things from her, and then asking her, can I help you with anything? And I would put my side a time where I do my recruitment job and then help her out because she needed help. And that's how I got into project management. So she got me a job after a year of just, learning from her and all that sort of stuff. She fought to get me a job in project management. So then I ended up in project management, and then I just worked my way up by connections, by just connecting with people and wanting to make an impact in other people's lives and projects and all that sort of stuff. And then, that I was happy, and I felt fulfilled, and I got to my figure of like where I wanted to be in terms of like, my 6-figure salary and all, like just living, being able to pay my bills, not be in debt, and just travel. travel every year.
Mm.
And that's what for me was a fulfilling life until I had kids. And that
I did,
changed.
yeah,
And then, yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I love it. And when you met Adam,
Hmm.
he was you knew that he was the one that then triggered okay, I've got the he that I want to have children with, as opposed to just wanting to have kids for kids' sake.
Yes, absolutely. And I did a lot of
Yeah.
work to get to that point of who and what would he look like. So that was the second part of like understanding
Ooh.
the values. So I wrote down my values, the values
Yes.
of my to be person that I have kids with, if I was to have kids with them. And for me, it wasn't even about getting married. It was just like, if I was to have kids with someone, who would that look like? Who would they look like? And what kind of father would they be? And so I wrote it all down. And then I met Adam.
Of course you did.
Yeah.
That's the best thing. It is fine. It's like I've written down the goal, but I love that you did it around values as well. I mean, I'm such an advocate of values and believe that when you get really clear on them, the world can change.
Yes.
But I love that you've done that. And then, of course, he's come into your life. You've been able to have kids, and then you've gone, yep, I'm not happy. Let's redo our values. And that's where you saw the misalignment between the work that you were doing and the life that you wanted. So how did you then
Exactly.
unwind that? So you're in the corporate world, you're
Mhm.
gone on maternity leave with your
Mhm.
second child, you've worked out your values down the line to how you're living.
Yeah.
What happened after that?
Yeah, so once I went on maternity leave for the very first time, funnily enough, and this happens to a lot of people, it seems to be, that I actually got a promotion when I was pregnant, and I actually didn't tell them I was pregnant, and I was fighting for this promotion. I got this promotion, and it was in talent management, where you do a lot of leadership capabilities to get women into higher positions, right? And for me, it was all about inspiring women to be in the leadership positions, which is funny because then I didn't realize what that actually looks like when you're a mum. So like in corporate, if you're going to be in leadership positions, it's you got to work hard for it and you got to show up. And I think that there is a lot of sacrifices that women in the corporate world in terms of leadership make to get to that point. And so I was advocating for that and working on strategies and leadership capabilities to get women to that point. And so I was really passionate about that. I fell pregnant and then I had my daughter. And when I went back to my corporate job, it just never was the same. I was like, I just want to come home to my baby. I don't want to be working 9 to 5 and struggling just to get, because during that time it was that transition after COVID. So I was pregnant during COVID. But then
Yes.
when I went back, it was that bit of a transition of, luckily enough, I did work from home for most of it. But there was that one day that I needed to be in the office. And that one day was a struggle to even, and I thought to myself, how did women do this? Like, how did women do this 5 days a week? I struggle with going to the office one day a week. And so it just blew my mind. I was like, how do you do that? Because you got to think about, it's a mental load, right? Think about the cooking, this, that, like, everything for Jasmine. And for us, what really did it was that Jasmine actually, when she was 6 months old, had a few medical she had a medical condition. And I know it doesn't sound as bad, but it was pretty bad for us. It's called Sandifer syndrome. And Sandifer syndrome is a reflux, a type of reflux. But the perception of like what she was going through, it was almost like she was having epileptic seizures. So she would arch her back really badly. Her eyes would go like different ways and all that sort of stuff. And so we ended up in hospital quite a few times, an emergency, because it would just happen. And she'd get confused and she'd just be very confused and dazed. And sometimes she'd go limp. And so that provided us with so much anxiety because it was happening every 3 weeks. And even though, like, she got diagnosed, eventually she got diagnosed, and luckily they actually saw it happening. So as I went to emergency, she would vomit a lot. And there was and as I was handing her over, she was actually having that episode, like the epileptic kind of episode. And they saw it and they actually screamed out, seizure, seizure, right? So we went into a room and they thought that it was a seizure. But then she got diagnosed with Sandifer syndrome, and they were explaining to us that it's just a random reflux thing and that makes her body go really weird, and that we had to manage it, right? It was just something that we had to manage at home. But because of
Mm,
that, she lost a lot of weight because the feeding was a bit of an issue. So I was
mm,
trying to work, but at the same time trying to understand her situation and what kind of foods she'd need to eat. How do we minimize these epileptic
mm,
seizure look-likes that she was having? And so I was just taken away from work. So because I wasn't there, I wasn't being a high achiever, I wasn't making an impact, I wasn't doing all the stuff that I was making me feel fulfilled at work. I was just
mm,
going into work just to survive, just to get that money, that paycheck, just to survive. And what I really was worried about was Jasmine. And there was a lot of medical appointments that we went through, just to
mm.
make sure that her weight was on right, like her weight
Yeah.
trajectory was going well, because that's obviously a concern as well, that she
Mm,
lost a lot of weight because of it. So I was in and out of the hospital, in and out of like doctor's appointments, going
mm,
to my manager, sorry, I've got to go to another appointment. And then when Jasmine was 15 months old, she grew out of that, and then she had another random thing, an infection called septic arthritis, which ended up in surgery. So she had a shoulder surgery, and that was it. And I was pregnant at 10 weeks, and it was just, again, that thing happened again, and we're in and out, and I was pregnant, and I was like, I don't want to, I just, I don't want to be feeling guilty as a mum and as an
mm,
employee, because I'm constantly calling them, and I even thought to myself, they probably think I'm lying, that that I'm constantly in these things that are happening, but that's life, you just can't. And I realized life is too short, and I know that all
mm,
too well, right, with my mum. And then I started going into the deep, the
mm.
discovery of my purpose, of why I would change this up, and what it meant even for my mum. And I started to ask questions about my mum and how she was courageous. And then that was another story in itself, in the courageous part. But that's how it all started, I guess.
Oh, well, and I mean, nothing like having a sick child to really help you make decisions around what's important and what's not. Like
Yep.
it's kind of a no-brainer. And then I guess with the pregnancy at the same time, and you going, what am I doing?
Yeah.
This is just not working.
Yep.
So how did you therefore go about doing your values? Like there's so many ways that you can do it. You can sit down, you can get words
Yeah.
up. What process did you go through to find out, what your purpose is? And as you say, even linking it back to your mother who passed when you were 4. How did you go through it? Like if
Yeah.
someone's listening and going, yeah, I get all this, it's great,
Yep.
but where would I even start? Like what did you do? You and Adam, or just you?
Yeah, yeah. So there's a few deep things that you have to think about first. And for us, we sat down and we had a framework. Like I had we did 2 strategy day sessions, and actually I have created an online course based on what we did, which I call it the foundations of knowing that you want to start a business, and the values and everything that aligns. It's your individual values and as a family values. And if you're going to create a business, how does your business then play a part, and make sure that you're aligning those, everything together? So we actually sat
Mm,
down, we went through questions around, okay, what did your past look like? What did my past
mm,
look like? Let's discover, who are we and where are we from? Like, where do we come from? Because our past and our pain
mm,
points, right? So it comes down to, where have you felt the most pain? And so Adam and I did this activity individually, right? So I gave him the questions, he got the questions, and we just wrote down and we journaled a lot. And then we got together and we came back. Okay, so what does your past tell you? What do you remember from your past? And where do those, limiting beliefs come from as well? Because I think it comes down to,
mm,
when it comes to trying to make a change, a lot of that is, what have you been told as a child that you had to
yeah.
live up to? What did your
Mm,
family actually tell you that those values are? What are those values that you want to leave behind? That might be your parents'
mm,
values, or your cousin's values, or whatever it is. Like, what are the values that you want to just sort of put aside and go, that's really not for me and for my future? It worked when I was a
mm,
child. And so asking yourself all these deep questions about, it's a process of going deep into the why, into your
yeah.
purpose, and where you're heading, and envisioning where you could go, where you could be in 10 to
Mm.
15 years time. And I think,
Oh, absolutely.
yeah, and I think when you do that activity of going, understanding your past, looking at what
Mm,
you want to do and what you want to leave behind for the future of your family, and then sitting down and going, okay, great. Now looking at all of that, creating values for us is almost like a framework that we live up to, in terms of we then built out the values of what we want to keep and what we're doing good and what we want more of. More of meaning, how is this going to then align to the future of our vision of where we want to be in 10 years' time? And then once you have that list and that framework, then
Yeah.
you are able to then build on, whether it be your business or whether it be something else that sort of like you get to an action, right? You start to action those things that are based and aligned on your values. You know what to say yes to and what to say no to.
Yeah. So true, isn't it? I think I know, having done a lot of this work myself over the years and helped others do it too, that when it's really clear, it just makes decision making easier.
Yes. Yeah, it does.
Yeah, because and whenever you're facing something where there is tension or it's hard or whatever, it's usually because there's a challenge up against one of your values.
Yeah.
So interesting. So when you were going through this with Adam, were these your questions and a framework you'd created, or had that been something you'd sort of learnt over the years?
Yes, over the years, because I had done that.
Yeah.
Yeah, over the years, and also just for me, it was also business strategy as well, because it was all part
Yeah.
of, okay, great. So we've done this, and now what does our business then look like? Because then we need to create a business that aligns with our individual. And so the business side of things, actually, I listen to a lot of podcasts and, how to start your business, or how do you know how to, all that sort of stuff. So I listened to a lot of it, and it was very much aligned with the same kind of work that I had already done previously. And it was just, how do I match them up, and how do we sit down and talk about the business side of values and what we're going to build? And then it became more of we did a course, actually. Adam and I did a course, on a marketing course, on how to live like more freedom. How do you create a business that's going to be more freedom and give you that flexibility? And it is all about marketing. It's all about that,
Yeah.
it's how do you market yourself and how do you create those processes and systems? And so that's where we then went into learning, upskilling ourselves and understanding where our gaps are. Okay, we want to get to here. We know this much, but where's our gap, and how do we then learn to get to that next level? So then it became understanding what to focus on in terms of investing in
Yeah.
courses and investing in the right things, and to get to that next level.
But what a beautiful difference between someone who goes, I'm not fulfilled, something's not working, and then it's just like, throwing a dart at a dartboard with a blindfold on. It's, I go and do this and I go and do this and I go and do this. You've created a foundation that allowed you to go, okay, well, based on this, these are the things that work for us, these are the things that don't. This is the extra learning or the skills, the capability we need to go down the direction that we're going down.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is, I loved when I heard you speak about this on stage, because again, it's something that when you get this piece right and you invest the time and the effort into doing it,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, doesn't it just give you clarity for the future and what you want to do? So
It
how
does.
did, from all of this, you end up being the co-founder with your husband around a SaaS video company?
Yeah, okay. So that's a really good question as well, because we did the work on what our skills. And so after we did this marketing crash course, they
Mm.
actually spoke about being in business. Adam has been in business before. He's
Yes.
done 4 different businesses before going on to this journey. So it's like, okay, well, what
Okay.
worked, what didn't work? And what I saw him do most of the time is work on the business, work in the business, not on the business, work in.
Yes.
So he's constantly working 12-hour days. We would travel, this is before kids, and he'd have his laptop with him. So I thought to myself, there has to be a way to create a business that allows us not to, to step away. So we did this marketing crash course, and they talked a lot about outsourcing. So investing in, so creating an offer where you can then profit 70% of that by creating a team that can do the doing. So, and it's pretty much project management 101, right? You project manage people, HR, like recruitment, all that sort of stuff, recruiting people. So then we realized, well, our two strengths lie in that. So I could then focus on the team, the people, the product management, making sure that everything's in deliverables. And Adam can focus on the sales part because he's been selling for 15 years and he sells software, and he had done video demonstrations before for someone else, and that worked out really well. And then one of his networks said, you should do it that should be a business. So we're like, okay, how do we do that and make sure that both of our skills are well and truly in, so that we can make it an outsource kind of business model, right? So then we created an offer and we're like, okay, great. So how do we put this all together? And when we were ready, it took us 6 months to really, it's a lot of thinking, strategy, talking to people, what worked, what didn't, going on Upwork, finding out who the talent would be. So creating like a mini team of what our team could look like. So breaking up the video production of what that looks like. Who would we need in terms of the team? Let's look at what's out there. So do a lot of market research and what are people looking for, and a lot of market analysis. So we went deep into and finding out what a niche could look like. Do we just do HR? Because I'm in HR. So we actually started off with niching it down to HR companies only. And then we realized that was too difficult, because when we were going out to networking, a lot of people were actually really interested in video marketing, but they weren't in HR. So then we opened it up a little bit, and we went to, we started talking to someone that had an app for medical practitioners and all that sort of stuff. So it was more around kind of like a recruitment platform. And so we started talking to different types of people that actually needed our service. But the problem that we faced initially was, how does it all come to life? And then we realized that's a really good question. We can talk all about it, but how do we? So we then created a team that would do internal projects. So we came up with 3 videos of how it would come to life. And so with these 3 videos, we then showcased it to people. And it took us 4 months to get our very first client. Funnily enough, our first client is a HR company, and they're still with us now. Yes. And I'm like, did I manifest that? It's a manifestation in itself. Yeah. And so now our clients they vary. So one of them is an automated tool that actually works with LinkedIn. They're called HRS agency. And again, they're not a HR company, but their name is HRS, which is weird because that's another HR kind of I'm like, that's but they're not a HR company. But what they do is they automate tools, for LinkedIn. So AI automation messaging. So then we just opened it up, and sometimes it's just listening and understanding your target audience. And once you start to open up, I mean, sure, we had a business plan and a strategic plan, but that's all changed. It evolves, and allow it to evolve. But at least we had some sort of plan that sort of allowed us to open up the way that we would see things, the way that we would talk to people. And now, since February, we've now serviced around 11 or 12 clients now, and 3 of them are still with us now, and we're growing. It's actually worked really well, and we've got a good team now that does all we're doing.
Perfect.
Yeah, and we're looking at growing our team next year.
I love this. Tell me though, how do you find working in a business with your husband?
Oh, it's very difficult. It is hard.
Go and say, he had to walk in the park.
But it's beautiful. No, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's difficult because we're both very different. We work very differently. He is an innovator, so we had to read a book called Rocket Fuel, and it talks about being an innovator and an integrator. And he's an innovator, and I'm the integrator. So we definitely balance each other out. But when it comes to having tough conversations and making decisions, we're very different when it comes to that. I'm very much in the detail. I ask a lot of questions, and he just figures it out. He's just very much I'll just figure it out. It's fine. I'll just say I'll do it, but then, I'll figure it out as I go. And then he might just work 12-hour days just to figure that one thing out. Whereas I'm like, I really need to know exactly every single step. And so I ask him 10,000 questions so that I'm sure that I understand it, and then that I can implement it. And he hates the questions. He hates me asking 10,000 questions. He's like, Ev, just do it. You can figure it out. I'm like, yes, but I need the answers first and then I'll figure it out, So it's a lot of fun, but it all comes down to values because we're both fighting for the same thing. And that's why if anyone listening is thinking about going into business with their other half, definitely do the values thing because that's what drives us to have a bit of an argument and the next day we get on with it. We're just like, we don't have time to be resentful. We don't have time to just not be on the same page. So we just move on really quickly. And I think that's one thing that has helped us move on from arguments as opposed to not having a business. Because before I'd be really resentful and I wouldn't talk to him for like the whole week. Now we have to talk to each other. We move on. We just move on because it's a bigger picture.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say too. Like, if you've had a disagreement at work, which work colleagues do, right? Especially two co-founders.
Yeah.
But if you have a disagreement at work, how do you separate out then that being a work disagreement and then being happy, loved up husband and wife? That's another challenge in itself. That it sounds like your values support both, the work relationship as well as the personal relationship and the integration of the two.
Yes. Absolutely. It has to.
Yeah.
But it's interesting you asked me that.
Yeah, well, it's funny because over the years, a lot of the clients I've coached, so predominantly in financial services, were actually say it was typically the husband's financial planning business and the wife worked in it because there wasn't a lot of women that were running their own business. So it was predominantly the husband business, the wife worked in it. Now, some of these relationships worked really well as a work relationship and they preserved their marriage at the same time.
Yeah.
But others they weren't healthy. They weren't healthy. And then there was control issues and all this other stuff, which then filtered into their marriage. And for some, it actually made sense to go separate ways.
Yeah.
So, but one group that I did some work with, we did a whole thing on their values. And it was so interesting, Evelyn, that when we did it, the wife sat there and went, oh my gosh, I shouldn't be working in this business with you.
Wow.
Because it doesn't align with any of my own personal values at all. And they then made decisions which were better for both of them, better for the business, better for the family. It was amazing, all because of the values. So So you don't just do this, right? I know your mum and I know you've got the your marketing, but you've got some other businesses too.
Yes, absolutely.
Talk about those, can you? Because you've got like 100 hours in every day that none of us have.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And that's the reason why we created this business where other people do the work and we just manage the deliverables and manage all that sort of stuff so that it allows me to then help others do the same thing. So Adam and I are all about community. So when we did the values, one of them is community. And it's actually been on my vision board for a very long time. I've been doing vision boarding and in that is community. It was just always like, I just want to help people something, and create an impact. So I know that a big part of like even the marketing crash course that I did talked about brand, personal brand, storytelling is a big thing. Connection is a big thing. And for me, because in my corporate job, I thrived in connection, in connecting with people. So entrepreneurship can be very lonely. And so how am I going to connect with people? And for me, it's a bit of both. It's a bit of learning, connection, because I need that to grow and also to inspire others to do the same thing. So I decided to just share the journey. And again, it comes down to the courage, right? The courage to do this because initially I kind of heard myself, stop myself from doing it. I was like, who's going to want to listen to our journey? Who's going to want to care so much about we're not successful? Maybe we haven't made it, like maybe I'll do it when we've made it and when I can talk about all of the learnings and all that sort of stuff. And then one day I found myself reading a book to my daughter and it said, Dream Big, Little Alyssa. And Alyssa's my second daughter's name. And I was on maternity leave, dream big, little Alyssa. I was like, okay, dream big. And as I was reading it out to her, I realized, wait a minute, I need to dream big and I need to do this and I need to start to share the journey. So I created the Legacy Building Mamas podcast in September last year, so 2023. And at that point, we hadn't even had a client. So we had just started to go live. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, what about if we don't find a client? What about if it takes us 6 months? What about if it takes us a year? What about if this doesn't work out? All of these what ifs, what ifs, what ifs. But I was like, you know what? Just be brave and courageous and just get it done. And if anything, the girls can, if no one listens to this podcast, at least the girls, when they're older, I will save this and this will be our journal. And this will hold me accountable as well, because I need to be held accountable to show up every single week for my business and to talk about the learnings, the journey and all. So I started that and it's still going. So it's been 14, 15 months now. And I've learned so much from the people that I interview. I've learned so much from even building the community that I built out in January, and like connection with other amazing mums who are doing, and we're going on this journey together and learning things from each other has been so invaluable. And I'm so glad that I got the courage to do it, because it's changed everything for me. And I don't regret that.
But you know what I'm really, really loving about this story as well is that you did it even though you hadn't even got a client at the time, as opposed to which so many, but I can't share my story until I've got there, because people want the real stuff. Yes, you've got podcasts done by people that have made it, and that's all great. But I love that it's the journey that you're going on and that comes through. And you've just got out there and given it a go regardless. Like that to me is courage. And it's funny because I only started this podcast 2023 as well. But a bit earlier, probably a couple of months earlier than you did.
There you go.
And the same thing, it's the commitment that every week I've made to showing up and doing it, to the point where sometimes it'll be and I do it at 9:00 on a Wednesday night. It goes live, and it'll be it'll be like 6:00 that evening on the Wednesday. It's like, oh, fruit! I've got to go live. I've got to get something out at 9:00. So I will sit there and record my own episode if I haven't had time, because I'm at the moment doing all my own editing. But it's that commitment to me, and probably like you, one of the most beautiful things is the kind of women that I've been invited or that I've been introduced to come on. I might never, ever have otherwise met or connected with if it wasn't for the podcast.
Absolutely. So it opens up a lot.
I love that. Oh, totally. Now, you also are a mindset coach, though.
Yes, I am.
Yeah,
so
talk to me about that as well.
Yeah, definitely. So I maybe only 3 months ago, I opened myself up as a business and mindset coach, because I found that a lot of people were reaching out to me and saying, hey, I heard your podcast, and how did you do this and how did you do that? And in my mind, I was like, I would love to spend some time and just help people build their business. And for me, it's just like, how do you even start? Because the more I connected with people, a lot of the mums were saying, I want to start, but I just don't know how. How do I start? And how do I even know what to begin with? So I created an online course that goes side to side with the business and mindset coach. So I talk a lot about self-limiting beliefs, right? Just understanding what they are, reflecting on that. And this online course also helps you build out your business foundations, values, where do you come from? All those questions, that essentially everything that we spoke about is in this online course, about how do you even get to that point of creating your values and then building a business that aligns with that, with some business fundamentals, actions. How do you create smart goals? How do you create an action plan? Some marketing strategies, all the marketing strategies that I learned, that I took on that online course, going, I want to share this and make it accessible for mums, because at the end of the day, it's the technical side of things as well. Like, how do I create an email marketing list? What platform do I need to do? How do I even, get on a podcast if I wanted to share my experiences, the technical side of things? So I'm finding that a lot of the things people are asking me for, I want to be able to help and share all the knowledge, and by doing, online courses. So I've created an online course that has helped mums sort of understand how to even where to begin. But also now I'm creating a program, because the feedback that I received from that is, how do I, great, I've got this online course and there's a lot of modules and but how do I have that accountability? So they're finding it difficult, the time, right? The time and all that sort of stuff. So based on the feedback that I've received, I now am going to start a program to help others start in 2025 their business. It'll be how to launch your business in 12 weeks. And so I've got a free masterclass that will show you how all of that will work out in a 12-week program so that you can start and I can help you out throughout the 12 weeks to get your business to a launch and get your first client.
Beautiful. Okay, so firstly, what's the online program called?
It's called Become a Mumpreneur in 2025 and build your
Become a Mumpreneur in
legacy.
2025.
Yes,
I love
and
it. And
build your
we'll obviously
legacy.
put all the show notes, links and show
Yes.
notes. What is the program called?
The program is called How to Launch Your Business in 2025 and Build Your Legacy.
Oh, how to launch your business
in
2025 and build your
and
legacy.
build
So
your
someone
legacy.
could still do the online course or they could do the program.
Yes,
They could
absolutely.
do either or.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Beautiful.
I'll provide
Oh,
you with that because some people prefer the do-it-yourself, right?
yeah.
Do-it-yourself online course. And
Yep.
actually, the online course is also it's called there's a from purpose to profits. How to build your
Yeah.
online, how to build your business because we're going from purpose to profits.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
the transformation that you would get in that
Yeah.
online course.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, if you're just doing it for fun, it's a hobby and
Yeah.
it might satisfy purpose, but you don't need to necessarily profit from it. If it's a business, most want some sort of commercial return for all the effort and energy expended. Oh, I love, I
Exactly.
love, I love this.
Yeah, because it
So,
comes from the purpose, right? So you got to have that
yeah,
purpose, that drive,
yeah,
but then how do you build that a business to be viable to get that profit? And that's where the marketing strategies come in and the business
yeah.
strategies. So there's the it's the mindset and the business strategy
Perfect.
essentially that transforms you
Mm.
into a paying client.
Ooh. Oh, I love it. Okay, so on that note, well, actually, I've got two things I need to
Yep.
ask you. What's your why? Why do you do what you do? How would you answer that?
Oh, goodness. I'll try to keep it short because I know that the why I do it is to have an impact. So for me, what success looks like for me and my family is working on the things that like I guess spark us up that I want to wake up in on a Monday morning and be happy to go into work and something that gives an impact, so giving back to people. So for me it's just being courageous enough just to be able to share the love, like everything that we want to, I guess experience and all that sort of stuff. I want people to feel that too. But my ultimate why is my family. I want to do it for my
Mm,
family. I want to be able to be present with my kids. So when they go to school, I am able to work just the school hours, pick them up
mm,
from school, and then take them to their activities because I didn't
mm.
have that because I
I was
missed
going
out
to
on that.
say,
Yeah.
and why is that important to you?
Yeah.
Because you never had it growing up.
I never had it, and I never had
Mm,
choices. I had to create them, right? But was I given the choice? So for me, my why is giving my daughters choices. That if
mm,
something, we don't know what 10 years down the track will look like, right? And in terms of schooling and all that sort of stuff, I want to just be able to provide them with choices and choices
yeah.
to be and live authentically. Because I think that is
Oh,
probably the biggest thing that I'm seeing, that people are not really living to their authentic self because
mm,
everyone's just doing a day-to-day thing, a 9 to 5 thing,
yeah.
things that they're told that they need to do. So I want to be able to teach my daughters that you don't have to live any sort of way. Just find what truly inspires you and do that.
Mm.
Just live
And look at the
authentically.
role model.
Mm.
Yeah, and look at the role model that you are for that.
Yeah, yeah. You
Like
have to
your
show it.
story, yeah, is that.
Mm.
The pursuit of choice that
Yeah.
leads to happiness. Like, this is so beautiful. And I know this is almost like a silly question given
Hmm.
what you've just shared, but what's the next thing you've really got to reach in and find some courage for?
Well, that would be like I mentioned at the start of the
Yeah.
podcast, is becoming a speaker. Probably in
Oh,
2025, yeah, at the end of the year, once I have a bit more time and all that sort of stuff, I would love to become a speaker. So get in front of masses audience and just talk about the
mm.
story, inspire people, and just become a speaker. So that's my next step of being courageous and knowing how to speak in front of thousands of people one day.
Oh, it is. You will absolutely get there, no question. Like, you're already such a beautiful inspiration as you
Oh,
are.
thank you.
I can so see. And by the way, on that note, I'm just about to launch a whole series of business masterclasses. I'm running
Yes.
them live in person in Melbourne, but they will be available recorded. And actually, the first one
Amazing.
is on speaking.
Oh, there you go. I need
Yeah,
to sign
how
up.
to become the speaker that you want to be. So February,
Yes.
you might need to come along.
I think so. Yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah.
That's why I'm so excited to have you in my corner now and connection. Let's yeah, keep the dialogue happening because I'll learn
Oh,
a lot from you.
we're in.
Yes.
Absolutely. And seriously, I know we've way gone past time, but I just could sit here and talk to you all day. Like there's like a zillion things that like rabbit holes that have been open that I just want to run down and play with. So
I
I
appreciate
know
that.
that we might actually have to have you, Evelyn, back on here in the not too distant future for a second one because
I would
there's
love
so
to.
many other things I want to talk to you about that I know your journey and your story will help so many others. But in the meantime, if anyone is out there wanting to start their own business, learn what it takes and do it in 12 weeks.
Yes. Yes.
Jump into the show notes, get all the links, do Evelyn's online course, or her program in 2025, and watch this space as she becomes a speaker on stages.
Thank you so
12
much.
months. Thanks so much for coming on board. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for allowing me to share my story. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.